good to walk in the arena and to see all the kids swinging their arms. Oh, not only the kids, Cousin Luke, but all our mates out there, all the Bushwackers, as we're coming in, Cousin Luke, as we're climbing, as we're marching, as we're going to the top of the WWF.
Oh yeah, we are back. Welcome to WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. My name is Steve, and with me, as always, the one and only, and thank God for that, the Scum. We got a ton of news this week, a ton of stuff going on, Scum, so let's get right down to it. Are you with me, brother?
I am with you, my brother, and it is always a pleasure to be back with my longtime tag team partner, yourself. A pleasure to be doing business alongside the good folks. Always a class act over at Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. Actually, you know as well as I do, we've had a lot of success the last couple of weeks. We thank our listeners and our followers. WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum, our own Facebook page. We've gone interactive, so to speak. So we're bringing you in to be a part of the show, and we're getting a great feedback there. We're excited about it. A lot of fans are excited about it, and that's going to continue. And if you haven't already, go on there, like us, and we appreciate all your feedback. We want to hear it all, good, bad, and indifferent, and the ugly. So speaking of the ugly, starting tonight, Steve, I know you're as excited as I am. We got a back-to-back shot of two special guests that we're dubbing the Hardcore Double Play. We got tonight, and I know you're excited about this. I know you're a longtime fan. We have from the old school, an innovator, a pioneer of the hardcore style, Bushwacker Luke. And then we're coming right back next week, next Sunday, when Steve and the Scum go to the extreme with former ECW World Champion Justin Credible. What do you think about that, my man?
I guess I should say, oi, man. That's right. We got one of the Sheephearders in the house with us tonight. That's the Bushwackers from the WWF. He goes by Bushwacker Luke, even though I'd like to remember him by his Sheepherder days running wild all over the Pacific Northwest and all over the country, really. Next week, we go from the real originator of hardcore and Luke to the extreme with Justin Credible, former ECW champion. Justin Credible will sit down for a 10 count with Steve and the Scum. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I can't wait either, Steve. I mean, these guys, back-to-back, couple of hardcore household names, let's say. Following them, I mean, this is just, I've been saying this for weeks and weeks on end. We've been talking, I've used the analogy that there were some irons in the fire. Well, you can vouch for me here. There were so many irons in the fire, the old Double Cross Ranch down in Amarillo was about ready to combust. I looked out the window, and there's Kane dumping gasoline on the place and setting the whole MFer on fire. I mean, we got so many great guests lined up. I cannot even wait. I'm just bubbling with enthusiasm to tell our listeners and to break out all of this great news that we have coming up.
You know, Scum, you're the master of surprises. It's been very, very busy in the international offices of WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. I'll tell you, though, Bushwacker Luke, Justin Credible, I don't know about you, dude, but that is one hell of a team, and it's probably a team that's crazier than we are, brother.
Well, I don't know if you can get much crazier than we are. And, geez, you had me looking over your shoulder there when you said the international offices. I hope we don't run into that mess that we had last week again. Jeez.
Oh, brother. Well, if you haven't listened to our show before, we're not your typical wrestling podcast. We keep it old school. We don't do the spoilers, and all of our guests will be ones you remember from the glory days of professional wrestling. Scum, it's going to be a wonderful evening. We look forward to Bushwacker Luke. Thanks so much for listening to our show, folks. If you haven't already, go to Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. Hit the like button. You can link to us from there. We're on YouTube at Mr. 33. That's Mr. A-H-H-33. Go ahead and subscribe to us. We update our podcast weekly to video. We're also going to be available on iTunes. I know, Scum, this week I got a small task ahead of me. I got to get a hold of those mothers and find out why our newest episode won't upload. But I'll go ahead and get to the bottom of that for everybody. We'll get it fixed. In the meantime, you can enjoy us on Facebook, enjoy us on YouTube. Thanks once again for joining us at WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum.
And don't forget to check out our brand new page on Facebook at WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. Give us a look over there. Get involved, people. Get involved.
You heard the man. You don't want to be messing with the Scum. He'll come to your house. And that's right, Scum. It's about time we have him with us now. Bushwacker Luke's going to be joining us momentarily. He's a multi-time tag team champion, a specialist in the art of tag team wrestling, been all around the world with his partner Butch. All right, Luke, thanks so much again for joining us. We have a lot of territory to cover here, almost 50 years to be exact, that you have been involved in the sport of professional wrestling. So let's get the ball rolling here. We have to go back to the beginning, from 1964 in your homeland of New Zealand, where you started out wrestling for NWA New Zealand.
No, 1962. 2 years earlier, I put my boots on.
So you've been around the wrestling industry since 1962. You began in New Zealand. You enjoyed some success there, and you met up with a fellow countryman by the name of Steve Ricard. Is that correct?
That's correct, mate. I actually first started for a promoter called Al Hobman. He ran a promoter in New Zealand. He was an ex-Mr. New Zealand bodybuilder, and my next-door neighbor was a bodybuilder. And one day he was in a contest, and the actual promoter, who was an ex-bodybuilder, said to my next-door neighbor, "Why don't you think about wrestling?" Hence, he started going to the gym, the wrestling gym, and one day he took me, and that's how it started.
That's incredible. So when along the way were you introduced to your partner, Butch?
Oh, Butch and me have known each other for many, many moons, mate. But we started together in 1966 as a tag team. Butch was still playing rugby. When I started in this, he was still playing rugby up to 66, 67. He started 66, 67, and we tagged up in 68. We tagged up full time. We were tagging in New Zealand in 66, but in 68, that's when we first did our first overseas trip. First overseas trip together was Singapore, Bangkok, all the Middle East, Penang, all up Malaysia and Thailand. We got to North America in late 71, start of 72, and we came in for the Vachons and Edward Capondier. They owned a promotion in the province of Quebec, Canada, called Grand Prix. They were actually running 3 towns a night. The Giant had come in. Andre had actually come to North America 6 months before us, and we already knew the Andre from the 60s in New Zealand. When he was doing, Andre from France was working in the European circuit, and a lot of European wrestlers came to New Zealand, and we met Andre in the 60s. So when we came over to Montreal in 71, 72, we already knew. We knew quite a few. Killer Kowalski was there too, because we had met Killer Kowalski in Australia in the 60s. Killer Kowalski was the one that actually blew wrestling wide open in Australia. Barnett introduced American wrestling to Australia in 1965, and that was WCW. World Championship Wrestling.
That's incredible. I wanted to ask you, who came up with the term the Kiwis for your tag team with you and Butch?
Well, that was a simple thing, mate. In New Zealand, it's called a Kiwi. Like Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, New Zealand, they've got a bird, a little bird, which you see on the boot polish, Kiwi boot polish. It's a little bird that comes out at night. Well, it only lives in New Zealand. And that's the way all New Zealanders are called Kiwis.
Very, very interesting stuff.
So when the first time we came to North America, we were in for the Grand Prix in Quebec, and they were running the Eastern Board, Quebec, Ontario, and a little bit of Manitoba. They were running 3 towns a night.
That is some long-term stuff here. We're going to move on. Let me ask you another question here, if I could, Lou. We get to the time. Let's talk about more up into the Pacific Northwest. You're in Stampede Wrestling. You guys are first saddled with a name that you would stay with you forever, well over a decade, and it's from a perspective of an old-school wrestling fan. We always want to call you the Sheephearders. You were called the Kiwi Sheephearders in your time there in Oregon. You again achieved some great success. You win the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag title several times. You were in a heated feud with a team of 2 young guys that would have some great careers in themselves, named Roddy Piper and Rick Martel. Now, again, I have to ask you, who came up with the moniker the Sheephearders, And if you could think back, give us your thoughts on those battles with Piper and Martel during this time. Did you foresee the huge things that lie ahead?
I'm just going to go back a few years, mate. So after Grand Prix, we went to Stu Hart's territory, and then the New Zealand promoter called us to come home because he actually had television, wrestling television. We never had television in New Zealand till 1967. That was, I'm talking about television, not wrestling. Television as in anything, you know, any soap operas, any movie, westerns, we never had. There was 67, we had television all over the country. And then in 75, he got a program on television. They gave him 13 episodes to start with, and he called us home. So we flew back from Canada in 75 and went home to start doing the first television tapings in New Zealand called On the Mat. And then when we came back then we stayed there for a while, and we came back to the States in 79. We were in Hawaii, and there's Buddy Rose and Roddy Piper in Hawaii, and they were working for Don Owens. And they said the tag team, their main tag team had just left, and they said, would you like to, we'll call Don Owens for you, and would you like to come in there? And next minute I was on the phone with Don Owens, and next minute we were booked in Oregon, Northwest Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, and so that was where you ran into Roddy Piper and Rick Martel as a team, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and now looking back at that point, when you were locking up, you know, they were in their kind of their younger years then. Could you foresee the huge things that were in the future for those two when you guys were doing battle up there in the Pacific Northwest?
I ran into Rick Martel when he was 15, mate. When I was in, don't forget, he's from Quebec, and I was working Quebec when he was a young boy. You know, he was 15, and I did a few shows, and he came in and did a couple of shows up in the Maritimes when I was working for Grand Prix, and that when he was 15. And I could see that this kid had fire. His brother, who died in Puerto Rico, Michel Martel, I'd known him too. And Ricky was his younger brother. And I could see that. And then Ricky came over to New Zealand. When I was back in New Zealand doing the tapings in the 70s, Ricky was over there. He became, Jim Barnett brought him over to Australia and New Zealand, and he became a big star with Don Morocco and himself as a tag team in Australia and New Zealand. So I knew this kid had something in him, and he became a great attraction for our business as a good guy, baby face, and then later on as the model.
Yeah, he sure did. He had some great years in the AWA, and then when he moved over in WWF, had some tag team success, and then he became the model, and yeah, he had a heck of a career, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I just saw him recently at a trade show, and he's still the same.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that the fans really like seeing you and him at the trade shows. That's got to be a treat for sure.
Yeah, and I still see Roddy. Of course, we've kept in touch because I spent a year and a half with them two in the Oregon, the Northwest. We went down as far as California, and we worked right up into Vancouver. We worked all that seaboard on the west coast there. And then I was with Roddy and Charlotte. We all went to NWA, to the Crockett, which became WCW, but when the head office was in Charlotte, we were in Charlotte all together too. Roddy, before he went to WWF, and of course before we went, we were all in Charlotte together. Not Ricky wasn't. Ricky was in the AWA. But, so I'd known Roddy for a long time.
Yeah, and that was, interestingly enough, that was where I was going to go. So next you went for a brief run down with Jim Crockett's territory, and after that run, you wind up down in Puerto Rico for World Wrestling Council.
We went into Jim Crockett's territory as the Sheephearders. We were only there 2 weeks, and we won the belts. We won the Mid-Atlantic. They had 2 lots of tag belts. This was a big territory, mate. They did all and later on they did all over the states like Vince is doing now. But NWA went as far as Nassau Coliseum on Long Island. They went up into they never went into Manhattan, but they went to Philadelphia, to Baltimore, up and down the West Coast. So we didn't know. This is how we weren't green in the ring, but we were green to the television, the cable business. Because here we are now with the 2 belts put on us after 2 weeks in the territory, working for Jim Crockett, and we're working for TBS, not knowing that that's going all over the country. And we're doing around 3,000 miles a week, working every night, working against, the Rock's dad, Dewey Robinson, who became the missing link, working against main stars. Axe, who was Axe and Smash, Axe and Paul Jones. He was a male superstar at the time, so we're working against big names, but not realizing it was going all over the country. And then we got a call from Puerto Rico that we could work 4 days a week and make as much money than working 7 days a week and driving all those miles. So hence we gave our notice, which we knew, and we didn't know you don't give Jim Crockett your notice. He tells you, I need you to finish up at Christmas and I'll bring you back in a couple of years. We went and gave him our notice. We gave him 3 months notice, and not knowing that we're on TBS, of course, and went to Puerto Rico, which was one of the bad decisions of my life.
Yeah, well, that was where I was going to head next, actually, to finish off this question. It was, you guys did the run in World Wrestling Council, and then after you left, you and Butch parted ways for a while. He went back to Australia, and you stayed in North America, competing up in the Southeast.
Well, he actually had wife problems, and packed up and went home. Not that he wanted to, it was overnight. He just got a phone call overnight, and the next day he packed up and left. And he left, and so I came back mainland, and I thought, before he left over that night, he said, I have to get a down under partner. And the only person I could think of was the Royal Kangaroos. We're from New Zealand, but Jonathan Boyd and Norman Charles III, Lord Jonathan Boyd, they were a tag team around the States in the 70s, and they'd broken up, and I knew where Jonathan was up in Oregon, and I called him, and he joined me as the Sheephearders.
That's incredible. So your longtime partner and yourself, you split up for a little while. You work with Lord Jonathan Boyd. You guys ripped a path of absolute destruction from the southern part of the United States all the way up into the middle part of Memphis, Tennessee. How was that decision made for you and Boyd to team up as the new Sheepherder while Butch was gone?
Oh, well, it's not something I wanted to happen, but, these things, you have hurdles in life. And I got Jonathan in, and we fitted together well, and we went into the Fullers territory, Intercontinental, and into Jerry Jarrett's territory, and then we blew them wide open with violence, and like Butch and me did up in the Oregon. We did great business up in Oregon for Don Owens, and we came back. Now I've got Jonathan with me for 2.5 years. We do the same in the central, in the Mid-South.
So you move on from there, and you hopped around a little bit. I think the summer of 1983, the more things change, I guess they say, the more they remain the same. You get reunited with Butch. You guys are still in Memphis. Is that correct?
No, actually finished in Memphis, and Jonathan and me went to Joe Blanchard's territory in Texas, in San Antonio. At the time, the Von Erichs were running out of Dallas, World Class, and Southwest was running out of San Antonio. Tony Blanchard's father, Joe Blanchard. And Jonathan we're only there 3 weeks, and Jonathan had a bad car wreck and was put in a body cast. And
tell us about a couple of the people that you dealt with down in that territory. Who were some of your memorable partners or memorable opponents, I guess I should say?
Butch come back in then. I done a situation with Joe Blanchard where I put him in hospital, and then Tully came out, and we ran wild. I ran wild with Tully in singles. Then I brought Butch back in, and then we had Redneck, Dick Murdoch as Tully's partner, and we did great business with him. And then Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull. Remember Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull?
Yes, sir.
Sure do.
I got a guy, a football player from West Texas.
You're exactly right. Well, we had them as a tag team for a year, Nelly. Dick Murdoch and Manny Fernandez. Here we've got a redneck and a Mexican in Texas. So we blew the place wide open. We actually stayed with them maybe for nearly 9 months to a year, all over Texas and over the border too, into Mexico.
So another feud around that time that's pretty legendary that you guys got involved with was Steve Kern and Stan Lane, the Fabulous Ones. A lot of people have great memories of those matches.
That was I think that started in '82 in Memphis. Jerry Jarrett was a very, very smart man. He was the first man to do music videos. Well, where else would you do them in Music City? Nashville. Anyhow, he had them doing all music videos, Best Dressed Man. He had them in barns and hot pools. They were really doing stuff to lift the level up of getting a woman back into the wrestling scene. And they did. They did some great videos. I don't know whether you ever saw any of them. They had them with towels around their waist in a sauna bath or in the hot pools. They had them lounging around in cars with young girls, in convertibles. Music videos like you see in rap songs and all that. Well, Jerry did those, and Jerry Jarrett and of course the King, Jerry Lawler. Jerry Jarrett put all these videos together in the early '80s. And of course, a gentleman that just died, Jackie Fargo. He was their manager to start with. They brought Jackie Fargo back for the first 2 months, and he was on the road with them, the Fabulous Ones, and that's how they got over. Jackie Fargo in their corner, because he was a legend in that area. And of course, we came in 2 wild guys, and then we did a little thing we did all over the country. I don't want to get involved in it, but we did it like I did with Joe Blanchard. Jerry Jarrett's father-in-law was the commissioner, told them that we were too thin, we were going to ban us. We laid him out in the ring, juice on the television and everything around. He got stretched out. Hence, the Fabulous Ones came to the rescue. They're going to kick us out of the territory. And that Jerry Jarrett came on and says that we can't have these people here, these foreign. We want around the territory, and the Fabulous Ones said, why fire them? Let us kick their asses out. Hence how feud started with the Fabulous Ones.
Yeah, and that was an all-time classic feud. I mean, there were titles traded, and there was a lot of blood shed in front of a lot of sellout crowds with that one.
And we took that from that area, Tennessee, Kentucky area, Mississippi. We took that to Puerto Rico. We took that to Florida. We took that to Texas.
And then eventually with that, you wound up for a little while back with Bill Watts and the UWF, if I'm correct.
That's right. We ended up now. This is getting back to when we left Crockett. We worked against Dusty quite a few times with Blackjack Mulligan in different territories, and Dusty was now the booker for Jim Crockett in NWA out of Charlotte, and he always says, I want you guys to come back. Every time he went back and asked Jim said, no, they walked out on me. Hence, we'll get into the story how we got back in the NWA. We're working for Bill Watts at UWF. We're the champions there. We beat Ted DiBiase and Steve Williams, and now we're the UWF World Champions. And a little situation happened. Going from our start of UWF to the finish, we had many feuds. We had a wild feud with the Fabulous Ones there. I'll get to that in a minute. But how we got back in the NWA was Bill Watts, him and his wife separated. He had to sell the territory. Crockett's bought the territory, UWF territory, and we were the champions. Hence, we're back in the NWA.
Well, worked out for you then, right?
Yeah, but that was from 81 to 88 to 88, and 88, and then 3 months later we went to Vince. Getting back to Bill Watts' territory, we had one of the wildest feuds ever. They built a cage out of barbed wire, a wooden cage that bolted to the 4 corner posts, was strapped to the 4 corner posts, and it was barbed wire all around. And then they undid the ropes, and it was just a big barbed wire cage. And we did that, I would say, I think it was 37 times in about 45 days with the Fantastics. 2 little guys around 200 pounds with hearts of a bull.
Yeah, I remember that feud well, too, that Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, the Fantastics, you guys, much like the Fabulous Ones feud, you had the wild Sheephearders going with kind of the pretty boys that the crowd would get behind, and those were some classic matches for sure.
And then one of the classics was from the Crockett Cup in the Super Bowl with the Fantastics. So still, they say it was one of the matches of that decade. You know, we were second to last in the Crockett Cup, or the semi-finals, whatever, in the Crockett Cup.
Absolutely, I remember that well. I remember watching those days, and that was just great stuff. So then, coming off that run, shortly after the run with the Fantastics, and back with Crockett after they got UWF, you guys are approached, like you said, by the WWF and Vince McMahon. Could you walk us through how you guys were first approached, yourself and Butch, and who or what was the deciding factor in you guys making that jump?
Well, we got back to them, and we started working with the Rock and Roll Expresses in NWA, and something happened with Ricky Morton that Dusty fired him or whatever, so they put us with Lex and Barry Windham. They're called the Towers, the Twin Towers at the time. So we shot an angle with them, and that on television, and they held the angle off. I don't know why, so they held the angle off for a couple of weeks, and we were waiting to go around the arenas with it, because we thought, well, we know Barry and Lex were pretty hot in NWA at the time. I'm in Cincinnati in the gym on a Saturday morning, and we work in Cincinnati that night, and I go out to the phone. Those days there was no cell phones. This is 78. And I dial my home number to pick up my messages on my phone, and there's a guy saying, give me a call. My name is Pat. When you get time, give me a call. My name is Pat. It's concerning work. So, this is Butch is still in the ring. Butch is still in the gym doing stomach. I was a bit lazy when it came to doing stomach. I did the weights every day, but doing the midsection, that was a 5-minute job, which was a 20-minute job. Anyhow, so I make the call there, and I said, yeah, I'm trying to get hold of Pat. He says, yeah, Pat here. I said, yeah. He says, yeah, Pat Patterson. Now the bell starts ringing, and he says, and he's got me on speakerphone, he says, I'm in the room here with Vince McMahon. And next minute I hear Vince McMahon's voice. And, I've been sending tapes to WWF. I was sending tapes to WWF, to Vince Sr. in the early 80s. Anyhow, so all of a sudden we're on the phone, and he says, when you have a day off, I'd like to talk to you. And I says, well, funny part of it, we've been on the road for so long, next Wednesday we've got a day off. He says, give me your address now. When you get home, you'll have tickets for you and Butch to fly to LaGuardia, to Kennedy. So, I went back. I said, okay. And I went back in the gym, or Butch was coming out, and I says, you won't believe it. We're going on Wednesday. We're going up to New York to see Vince McMahon. Here, at the moment, we're working for NWA, which is a wrestling company. Vince McMahon's company is a company full of celebrities. There's two different things. Wrestling, for celebrities, you make money in merchandise. You know what I mean? So we flew out Wednesday. We flew up and met Vince. And Vince said to us, we started talking to him. And Vince says, I'd like to bring you in as good guys. And Butch jumped up on his desk and he put his nose about 12 inches away from Vince's. He says, if you can make this face a baby face, go for it. And Vince looked at him and laughed. He said, well, you can't say I've got a bunch of good-looking baby faces. He said, look at Hulk Hogan. Look at Randy Savage. Look at Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Which is right. He mentioned all the rugged heads. Hacksaw. One eye crossed over. I've been with Jim since he started in the business. Hacksaw, a good friend of mine. And then he mentioned Terry, and then he mentioned someone else, and he said, look at them. Can you say that they're good looking? And then hence we started flying up. We went back to the Crockett's, and of course I gave the notice again. And which they didn't like, but we're moving on to stronger. We're moving to a stronger planet, the WWF planet, and we started flying up every week doing vignettes for a month. We did say 3 vignettes every week or 4 vignettes every week, so we did about 16 vignettes, and then after a month or 6 weeks. We hit the road. And he said to us when we were there, I want you between the Moondogs and the Sheephearders. And when we came home, and Butch said to me, and 2 days later we get contracts from the mail, and it's got Bushwackers. And of course, straight away we know that Vince wants to own the name, because then he gets mainly all the royalties. So we were so happy to be in WWF. Anyhow, Butch says to me, look, the Moondogs have already been there, and the Sheephearders have already been around on TBS. We were on TBS quite a bit. Even UWF, Bill Watts' tapes were going all over the country. So he said, well, let's create, his idea, he said, let's create a whole new moniker. Hence, the arms, we always, when we were healing, we took bumps out of the ring and swung our arms up in the air, but we never marched. But it was Butch's idea to start marching and high-stepping to the ring. He said, let's create a whole new thing. WWE had nothing. They gave us the name Bushwackers. We created the whole character.
That's incredible. So both of you came up with the idea of that march. That was a little bit, you said that was Bush that came up with the idea of marching. You had the screaming, the licking each other's head, and my favorite, using one another's head as battering rams. I've always found that to be great entertaining. I remember those vignettes, Luke. They were good stuff. So what did you think as you got into the WWF and started working with some of the talent? Were you skeptical at all that this gimmick wasn't going to go over very well?
No, people didn't even realize that we were the same 2 guys. And then I got a lot of people say to us, how can you go from a hardcore tag team to being comical entertainers? And I said that was easy to money. Now we're making merchandise money. We've got dolls, we've got T-shirts, we've got window drapes, we've got bed spreads, we've got everything you can think of. We've got poker machines, everything. And now all the toys, Hasbro is bringing out all sorts of toys. You know what I mean? We're on everything. And of course, I'd worked with Raymond. I knew Jock, and our first team we worked with was Jock and Raymond. And I'd worked with Jock. I worked with Raymond right back in the 72, 73. Jock was still young then. But then I was in territories with Jock, and we worked with them, the Rujos first, and then we worked with the Bolsheviks. We went with the Bolsheviks everywhere. We even went down to New Zealand with the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, I remember that time. Well, that was pretty good. Before I get into the next question that just kind of popped in my head as we were listening to you here, I got to tell you, a lot of people all over the world were doing that walk. Myself and Steve, years gone by, no stranger to me throwing him in a headlock and giving someone the old batter and ram Luke. So you were an influence on us, too.
And, mate, even people, when they did a touchdown on the NFL, some of them were doing the Bushwacker march in the end zone.
Hey, we're still doing it sometimes, my friend. We are still doing it sometimes.
Mate, I'm still, believe it or not, and I'm not I'll tell you my age. I'm in the late 60s. I'm 66, going on 67. I'm still doing that march and doing the head lick all over the world still. In Japan 2 years ago. I'm in Europe this year. I've been in Belgium, in Germany, England, and all over the States and Canada. I just did a 10-day run in Canada 2 weeks ago. And this weekend, I'm away most weekends. Last weekend was the first weekend I was home for quite some time. I'm still doing that same BS all over the world.
Well, hey, that's because people love it. And that leads to the question that just kind of popped in my head here. That after you guys developed those different traits that caught on with the kids, the adults, and everyone in between, I mean, you guys were so loved. What I wanted to ask you was, you had a long run there in WWF where you guys were the baby face. You guys were the good guys. But, some of us fans of the old school, still always remembered the Sheephearders. Was it ever talked about either by you or Butch or by someone in the office, maybe Vince or someone? Did anyone ever consider turning you guys bad when you were in the WWF, turning heel? And how do you think that would have went over with all the fans there?
I pushed that when we went and meet Vince that first day. I said, bring us in as the heels and turn us babyface. And you don't tell Caesar what to do. Caesar's got his own mind. He's got his own mindset, and he says, no, I don't do things that way. And later on, I suggested that. He says, our our character was so strong, he says, they won't buy it. The character is so strong. I suggested a few times.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering when you had said that. I mean, I guess I could hear where he was coming from. There were a lot of, little kids out there with the hats and dolls, like you said. So it's a tough call there for him with all the merchandise. But personally, I think it would have been interesting to see a little old school sheepherder come out there at some point in the WWF.
And believe it or not, I've done that a few times this year. I've done barbed wire matches and cage matches this year, and I've done that old stuff, and I enjoyed doing it.
Well, I'm sure the fans enjoy it as well.
Oh man, Luke, I got to ask you, it's been a great honor to have you here. We're going to let you go real soon. We appreciate your time. I got two questions for you. One, real quickly, give us an update on your longtime partner, Butch.
Butch, well, I don't want to bore you, but in 201. Into 201, we were going to do the Ohio State Fair in Columbus. I called him up. I said, I'll pick you up in the morning. He said, I can't move. I think I dislocated something on Sunday. We worked a Sunday show, Saturday and Sunday show. We came home Sunday night. It was an afternoon show. I don't know what time we're in. Tuesday was Columbus. And he said, I can't come. I'll go to a chiropractor tomorrow. Hence, long story, I sent my stepson to go and pick him up to take him to the chiropractor. And he said, Jason told me afterwards, it was so bad, he had to wheel him out on a computer chair.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
Take him, anyhow. So they took him to the chiropractor. And the next day I flew home. And when I flew home, I called him, and I usually drove past 2 minutes off the road, was his home off the main road, coming over to Indian Shores on the Gulf of Mexico. I lived on the beach, he lived just over the island. I lived on an island, he lived on the main road, just off the main road. So I called him, no reply, went to his home, found him on his bed, And now he was laying on his bed. The phone was 18 inches from his hand. He was dehydrated, and he was laying in his own pee and SHIT.
Oh,
Staph infection had gone right through his body and had seized up. He couldn't grab the phone. We dialed 911. The medics came straight away, got him to the hospital and that. They told us in 3 or 4 more hours he would have been Clark Gable, gone with the wind.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, he was taken on. He was in that hospital. It took him a week to find the strain of staph infection. He was upstairs in the what's the room upstairs? He was intensive care IC ward for 11 days. They had to put a pipe down his throat. His lungs were about to pack up. So he was on a breathing machine for 4 days. They had to pull tranquilizer. They had to shoot him up with tranquilizer because they kept pulling the pipe out. And he went down from 240 to 150 pounds.
Oh my goodness!
Because he became a skeleton. You know, he couldn't take food because they had that pipe down his throat. I think it was 7 days, and they were just feeding him by drips and that. Anyhow, long story short, he was in hospital with a rehab, and the hospital. It was 12 weeks, and when he got out, and that he wasn't too good. But he got up to 200 pounds. He says, "I'm going to pack up and go home and be with my daughters and my grandkids." So he went home, he got better, and he was better now, got home, was back, he was going to the gym every day over, and the guy sitting there who owned the gym, he says, "You're here more than I am, run the gym for me." He met a woman in the gym, he married her, and that, blah, blah, blah. Now they're on the coast, just outside the capital city. This woman has got she's got a shoe shop and a home on the beach. So he married the right person. He's living back there. 2010, he ends up in hospital. 5 days of his life, he doesn't even know what had happened to him. He just passed out, rushed to the hospital. They drained 120 cc's of poison out of his system. That virus in the system was dormant for 8 years, from 2002 to 2010, and it came alive again. And they drained all the scarage out of the system, and they found it was coming out from his hip. They removed his hip. And April this year, they put a hip back in. He's only had one hip for 3 years, and they just put a hip back in April. And now he's starting to rebuild his life and get around. He's got rid of one crutch and getting stronger by the day.
Well,
that's an incredible story.
Before Steve hits you with the last question here, on behalf of us and all the listeners at WGD, give our best to your longtime partner, and we hope that he, this time around, you know, maybe he's feeling better and get his health back, you know, for good.
I hope in 2 years' time, I'm going to give him a year and a half, because he was on crutches for 4 years, bent over, because he only had one hip. I hope to give him a year to get strong, a year and a half, and then bring him over here. It's a 26-hour trip, but I'd like to bring him over here and do wrestling conventions around the country.
That would be fantastic to see him. I hope he gets to the point when he's on the mend that he can go ahead and do that, and we can have a good reunion of the Bushwackers, the Sheephearders all around the U.S. We really appreciate that you took the time to join us today. I got one final question for you. It's going to pertain to the WWE Hall of Fame. It would seem, given your enormous popularity and longevity, not to mention the countless classic moments in tag team wrestling involving the Sheephearders and the Bushwackers, that it's inevitable that at some point you and Butch will take your rightful spot among the WWE legends. I was wondering, have you guys to this point ever been approached about the Hall of Fame by Vince or anyone that would be involved in that process?
Well, today, when you brought that up, today I was with Perry for a short time, Hulk, and Hulk hit Vince with that up 10 years ago, or 8 years ago. But as you know, the general manager of Raw and being the talent relations guy in WWF up till about a year ago was John Laurinaitis. And John Laurinaitis Butch and me broke that guy in the business, Johnny Ace. He was our flag bearer. He was our flag bearer, and then we went into 6 mans. We started with him in 85, 86, and then I broke him in the business. And I often talked to Johnny, and he says, "Oh, the office always said they needed needed the 2 of you if you go in the Hall of Fame." Because I shot a few scripts, being in wrestling offices most of my life. You know, I was behind the scenes most of my life, writing television, apart from WWF. I was booking in quite a few territories, and I put a skit together with Steve Urkel, my brother from another mother, because we did that television show with Steve Urkel. I don't know what they're still playing.
Family Matters. I remember that.
And that I said, that would be a good skit. Have Butch on a screen. He'd paid him down in New Zealand. I wrote the whole thing out for them, but of course it was my idea, not theirs. So of course they didn't go for it. But I put a whole thing together because I thought, entertainment. When they do that, the Hall of Fame, sometimes it's too serious. But I put a good skit together, which would have been entertainment. Anyhow, we're hoping one day that because we as I mentioned before, we had NWA belts, which Vince owns now, the company, all the tapes. We had NWA belts from 1980 onwards.
You're one of the most decorated tag teams ever.
Yep, and of course, no one knows this, but we were together for 34 years. Now, you name a team that was together on the road for 34 years.
That's incredible.
I can't think of any,
Not at all. I'll tell you, though, the Sheephearders, the Bushwackers, Luke, Butch, you got our votes any day of the week for any Hall of Fame you want to talk about. We really love your work. We always have. Both grew up right in the heart of your careers, right through the early 80s, right up till present day, and we can't thank you enough for being part of our show. Scum, is there anything else you wanted to ask Luke?
I just wanted to second what you said there, Steve. Luke, you got a couple of fellas right here that you're talking with. You got our vote for the WWE Hall of Fame, my friend.
Hey, mate, the name, I don't care what they call you, the Scum, whatever. I was going to say I was going to wash you down the drain. But no, Scum, I love you, mate.
Well, the feeling's mutual, my friend. Great to have you. You're welcome to come back on anytime with us.
And, mate, it's great to be on WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. So, folks, if you want to know anything about the past, history in wrestling, and the future scoops, tune in to WGD Weekly, and you'll get the best.
That was great, Luke. Thanks so much, man.
I own a gym on Clearwater Beach, right above Hulk Hogan's Beach Shop.
Oh, very cool. You live down there in Clearwater?
Yep, I live in Clearwater. And Terry's the one that got me to move to Florida to move down on the beaches in the first place in the 80s. He's the one who said, "You got to live here, man." And I moved here in 88. I moved to Tampa Bay over Indian Rocks Beach, Indian Shores. I was just down there about quarter of a mile from him. And then he moved to another bigger house. And then I went to Puerto Rico for 12 years. From 2001, I just came back this year, and I've got a gym in the same building. His shop, it's run by somebody else, but his Hogan's Beach Shop on Clearwater Beach is right underneath my gym.
Yeah, I knew that they opened that. That's fantastic. Well, we'll have to look you up if we're ever down in Florida. We'll grab a bite somewhere.
Clearwater Beach Fitness.
Very good, very good.
Okay, matey. Anytime. You've got my number. Right. Talk to you soon. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Luke.
Oh, and there you have it, folks. Bushwacker Luke joined us tonight. What a crazy interview. We really appreciated him joining us here at WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. What were your initial thoughts, Scum?
Well, the first end of the hardcore double play with Steve and the Scum, it doesn't get any more hardcore than 37 nights in a row on the road building a wooden cage with barbed wire taking place of the usual mesh and bleeding all over the country. So, hardcore, I think so, my friend.
It's unbelievable, the gambit of different gimmicks that are out there in the world of professional wrestling, tag teams especially, it was always something. But to go from there are two of the most sadistic, bloodthirsty dogs out there on the market to be in the lovable, cuddly Bushwackers, it takes some character to do that. And I thought it was pretty funny that he mentioned that Butch got up on the table. And again, now, you just don't give a shit. If you're just getting on the table, get 2 inches from Vince McMahon's face, right in the heart of the WWF dominating the world of professional wrestling. He gets 2 inches from Vince McMahon's face and is like, if you can make me a baby face, do it.
Yeah, I liked McMahon's response. Like, well, look at my baby faces. Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Jim Duggan. And then he says him and Duggan, those guys and Duggan were buddies. Now, imagine strolling into any tavern USA, say 1988, and it's Hacksaw Duggan and the Bushwackers bellied up.
You're either buying shots or getting thrown out of the bar by your face by the end of that night, I'd be willing to bet. Maybe even by your head.
I would say that, needless to say, there was very little walking going on and an awful lot of marching with Jim Duggan and the Bushwackers at that point.
It's kind of funny. Jim Duggan, another guy, and I know a lot of our fans go way back into wrestling. Before Hacksaw Jim Duggan got the American flag and the 2x4 running all over the WWF, he spent quite a bit of time down there in UWF, in that territory, Bill Watts' territory, spent some time, like Luke mentioned, with teaming up with Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne, and I believe, what was their group's name, Scum? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I sure do. That was the Rat Pack, Steve, and they were, that meant Jim Duggan was not exactly your flag-waving, thumb up in the air, screaming, ho, kind of guy for his entire career. He was a madman at one point. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He was very entertaining, and, man, he was great. But he much like the Bushwackers, there was a point in time before he went, and as our guest tonight said, there's a difference at that point between the wrestling companies and the entertainment company, and all parties we're talking about certainly succeeded in making that changeover, but what a difference.
Going from bleeding all the way through the Gulf of Mexico to touring around the country, being so popular and not having to do much other than maybe do Ring Around the Rosie with 2x4s at a Survivor Series.
Right, absolutely. A couple other things, Steve, that I thought were really interesting. First off, when he was saying back in the 60s when they were over in Europe, I believe, and he was saying how that was their first interaction with Andre and how Andre was over there. And man, one of Andre's, if not his last appearance on WWF television, I believe when at least in a near a ring capacity, he was in the corner of the Bushwackers. He was attacked by the earthquake. The feud never really played out. I don't think Andre was in health to get in the ring. I don't know if they were planning to start that, but I believe it was the Bushwackers and the Natural Disasters that were going. And Andre, he was on the crutches, came out with the Bushwackers. So I just think it's crazy to think, man, that had to be about almost 30 years, 25 years apart. So the relationship between them and Andre, another legend that he brought up that I thought was interesting, you would never equate this together, is he said Killer Kowalski made wrestling in Australia, put it on the map. I never heard that before. I mean, obviously a legend, has trained many of the stars of today, well, maybe not exactly today anymore, but Triple H, China, Perry Saturn, I know was from the Kowalski school. So interesting to hear, that take that he made wrestling in Australia coming from one of the Sheephearders, one of the Bushwackers, who, again, I know New Zealand, but, as far as that area, arguably the most recognized when it comes to somebody from that area, team or wrestler, would have to be the Sheephearders, the Bushwackers, So interesting take there with Kowalski.
Certainly, and he mentioned Edouard Carpentier was somebody that, as a promoter, worked back and forth with some of the European talent and actually was responsible for bringing Andre over to the United States as well. So there was that connection, and I think the promoter had a little bit of something to do with it. Not too far from where you and I hail from, Scum, up in Quebec, where they got their start in North American wrestling, moving out shortly thereafter. Well, it's very interesting when we think about it that over the course of that time, very few wrestlers can say today, he was probably one of the proudest things you could tell in his voice was that he told us that, yeah, I'm wrestling in barbed wire matches and steel cage matches like today.
I was thinking the same thing, like, man, really? Barbed wire and cages and the weapons and stuff? You got to tip your hat to him. I mean, maybe that hat may have a few teeth marks in it and a bite out of the side of the brim, but you got to tip your hat regardless, right?
Oh, come on, Scum.
Yeah, another guy that you would have to put in that category, you can never forget, a man that I draw attention to his home sake every time I talk about our upcoming guest, Terry Funk, no stranger, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know for sure that he's not, but I think he was involved with some of those matches earlier this year, last year, with the promotion Shane Douglas had started up, the Extreme Rising up in Philadelphia. So pretty sure if there's a show that's called Extreme Rising and Terry Funk's on it, pretty sure that's not going to be a, a Iron
not
Man
a lot
match.
of thresholds in the middle of that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, not that Terry Funk couldn't put on a hell of a match in his day, don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure if it's in downtown Philadelphia with the likes of Shane Douglas and Sabu and those guys on the card, that Terry Funk is probably, regardless of age at this point, mixing it up and getting into the weapons and the hardcore genre, so to speak. Pretty safe bet there. Speaking of which, next week, talking about Extreme, former ECW champion coming on, Steve. Just incredible. Really looking forward to that. You know, and I know you as well. We're a big fan of ECW for their run that they had there in the mid to late 90s before the company folded. And, you know, Just Incredible was right in the center of it. We'll have him here next week as part 2 of the hardcore double play, and that is something I'm really looking forward to. I know you are too.
It's great to have a variety of guests on our show, WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. We try to bring you a little bit of that old school, a little bit of something that maybe is more in tune with some of the older folks, maybe late 30s, 40s, and of course the kids that grew up in the Attitude Era, and that was the first thing that you saw watching pro wrestling, you fell in love and you became a fan. We got to help you guys out too. We're going to bring you the best in the Attitude Era into the Glory Days Part 2 or Glory Days 2.0, so to speak. What do you think, Scum?
Yeah, Glory Days 2.0. I like that. Either way, we had that discussion ways back now on one of our shows. Yeah, whatever way you want to put it, they're all classic moments, and that's what we're going to bring to you. Getting back to our guest this evening, Bushwacker Luke. Steve, I think maybe he gave a little fodder now. We had been starting with the interactive, getting our fans on board on our Facebook page. That's WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. Getting people on board for some of the submissions for our new segments. And the segment with you, I think that maybe Butch put an early favorite out on the table today for Steve's Gimmick Garage Sale, as I'm pretty sure if someone can produce a picture of a Bushwacker poker machine, you might be selling that thing on the air next week, my brother.
I'll do my best New Zealand auctioneer's voice and try to sell off that memorable piece of merchandise from the Sheephearders.
Heck, at the end there, you know, I got worried for a second. You know, he told me he heard the name of Scum and he's going to flush me down the drain. But then, you know, and then next thing I know, the show turns into a big love-in. I didn't know whether I was at the Mid-South Coliseum in 1985 watching a steel cage match with him and the Fantastics, or if I was out in the Haight-Ashbury at the Golden Gate Park at the B-Inn in 67. But, hey, you know, love all around. The Scum, he's no stranger to throwing around the love. So,
well, Scum, I guess all I got to say to that is, you know, give peace a chance, and if that doesn't work, smash him in the face with a steel chair.
That's right. Give peace a chance, and if for some reason you can't do that, scream ah or huss at the top of your lungs.
That's the Scum, folks. My name is Steve. You're listening to Wrestling Glory Days Weekly. We got plenty more for you. Tune in. Check out our YouTube page, Mr. Ra 33. We got everything going on YouTube, on iTunes. Freaking carrier pigeon. We're down on the street corners peddling our wares. We're all over the internet. Check us out. Tell your friends that are wrestling fans. We got some great stuff coming up. Not only do we have all those irons in the fire like my man Scum's telling you about, we got a lot more special segments coming along the way on our show, maybe even a couple of remote locations here and there.
Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff coming on. Since we brought about the WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum Facebook page, and we can get our fans involved a little bit more now, we're going to be bringing them a lot more stuff. We're going to be getting you guys involved. So stay with us. Pass it along to your friends. A lot of good stuff going on. We really appreciate you guys listening to us. We really appreciate the work done by the guys at Wrestling's Glory Days. They're always doing a fine job. Check them out on Facebook as well. And we do have plenty more irons in that fire. We have a who's who coming at you here in the near future. We have a lineup like no other. We are talking legends from every era, and they're going to be right here with us, so you don't want to miss it. Do us a favor, go on, give us a like on that Facebook page, and let us hear what you think. Let us hear good, like I said earlier, good, bad, or downright ugly. We want to hear what you think.
And hey, who knows, if somebody's out there that thinks they're actually smart enough to stump the Scum, feel free to try, but I'd be willing to bet he's got you around every corner. The Scum's a wily son of a gun. I've known him for years, and he isn't afraid to bleed either. On that note, Scum, I'm going to go upstairs and try to find me a razor blade to wrap around my finger with some athletic tape. I think I want to go out and bleed all over the neighborhood, scream hoss for a little while.
That sounds good. Actually, as we've been speaking, I've been constructing my very own wooden cage, and I'm just getting the razor wire around the second post here. So I think we're on the same page as usual, my friend. It's always a pleasure. Before we sign off here, I just wanted to say, on the heels of what you were saying with the Scum competition, you all know that I'm the Scum and I got the brains, baby. And I don't think you can do it. So bring your questions, send them in, and let's see what you got. Next week, Just Incredible, going to be here. ECW, heavyweight champion of the world at one point. He spent some time in the WWF. We are looking greatly forward to that. Part 2 of our hardcore double play, When Steve and the Scum Go Extreme.
Thank you once again for joining us this week. Thanks to Bushwacker Luke for joining us. Always a pleasure to do business with my man, the Scum. Any last words, brother?
No, that's about all, Steve. Thanks to my new pal, Bushwacker Luke. Thanks for not flushing me down the drain. And we will see you all next week, and we hope to hear from you on Facebook.
Keep in mind, folks, on the weeks that we have our special guests, we're going to spend as much time with them as humanly possible. We're going to go ahead and move all of our special segments to the weeks that we don't have special guests, so we wanted to thank you for hanging in there. Once again, always email Stump the Scum. Email us at steveandthescum@gmail.com. Attention, Steve, we're not going to let the Scum cheat and look at any of these answers. Make attention to me. Also, that gimmick garage sale, go ahead and send us in all your pictures and posts, anything you think would be of interest and unique, classic wrestling of the glory days of wrestling, any sort of gimmick that you have, some sort of souvenir you want to get rid of. We'll go ahead and try to auction it off here at the gimmick garage sale.
Well, wait a minute here, Steve. I'm not one to step in and correct you, but what do you mean the Scum might cheat? I don't need to cheat. Let's get one thing straight here. Unlike these listeners to our show, unlike the followers on the Facebook forum, let's get one thing perfectly clear. I am not some hick, baby. I am not some idiot. I am not some hillbilly that needs to cheat and have their iPad and have their laptop in front of them looking up the answers. There's no cheating necessary. It's all upstairs, baby. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, the Scum has got the brains, baby. And when it comes to the listeners, what I've found out, most of them, nothing but oatmeal north of the eyebrows, baby.
Give me a break. Before we sign off, Scum, I'm going to go over where you can reach us. That's at facebook.com/Wrestling's Glory Days. That's our main page. Check out all the great content there. We update on a daily basis. Our sidecar page, our page for myself and the Scum and our international correspondent, Matt, that's facebook.com/WGD Weekly. You can catch us on YouTube at Mr. A33, Mr. A Triple H 33. Email us, steveandthescum@gmail.com. Send in your request to Stump the Scum. Send in any questions you want. Send in any sort of memorabilia you want to sell on the Gimmick Garage Sale. Thanks once again for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Hey, this is former WCW, WWE, and TNA announcer Scott Hudson, and you're with Steve and the Scum on WGD Weekly.